Okay, we're starting again. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Daniel Gomenares, and I'm the resident pro here at Aputure Lighting. And thank you. It is my pleasure here to moderate the panel on the art of cinematography. Joining me today is ASC member Richard Crudo, also 6-time president of the ASC. Yeah. Christine Eng, NYU graduate and DP for the show Poker Face, one of the DPs. And Veronica Bouza, AFI graduate and cinematographer for The Gutter, which is at South by Southwest. All right, guys. So, we're going to talk about the art of cinematography, and I think there's a ton of aspects, right? We can talk about composition, framing, lighting, movement, and we can talk hours upon any of these things. But we're going to start a little bit with a little bit of an unorthodox question, and that is, or a little more esoteric question, and that is, where do you find inspiration? Where do you go to get inspired as an artist? Are there sources? Are there art pieces? Are there artists, exhibitions that you go to stay fresh? Yeah, that's it. Let's go from that. Christine, do you want to take the first step?
I'll go. All right, come on. Hello, everyone. Inspiration can come from everything, right? I mean, I think, I don't have it with me today. I put it down, but I always carry a little point and shoot in my pocket, and I'm just always taking photos, and it's like, when you're shooting film and then you get the roll back, like whenever you finally develop it, you're like, oh my God, I forgot about that. And it always ends up in my decks, like as I'm pitching, it goes in my mood boards. And I think like every single day, there's just so much beauty in the world. And like so much of how I get inspired is just like living, and just like taking it all in. But I also like on my days off, I love going to the museum. So that always helps, photography, art, all of it, sculpture work. I remember the first time I saw James Turrell, and it like blew my mind. I didn't even understand what was. I mean, those things are. I mean, it's kind of like this, But James Turrell, if you haven't seen one, you got to go check it out. It's really sick.
I feel like when I'm reading a script, I would say my first inspirations go from like nostalgic. I'm like, oh, I think I've seen this movie, or it kind of resembles an emotion. And then from there, it's going to museums and going to see paintings and.
You're good. Just outside voices.
Well, I've been talking all day. This is like my third panel. I'm sorry. But it's interesting. I feel like with every project, it's a different tactic. Because I feel like each project, each type of genre, you're going to have to go from different perspectives at it.
Now, I have to go with Christine on a certain level. I think once you've committed to this life or this pursuit, everything. I mean, you wake up in the morning and the way the light hits the wall in your bedroom, or the color of the cereal box. I don't know. There's thousands of things they were assaulted with all day, and hopefully the filter is at work and the good stuff sticks. And maybe it finds a place into your work somewhere, maybe it doesn't, but it informs you as an artist in a whole sense. I don't think you can break it down to say, well, I look at this movie or this painting to inspire me. If that's the case, I think it might be somewhat limited in scope. But when you're a vacuum that's taking in the whole room and everything that's happening around you, hopefully the good stuff will stick and provide some basis for inspiration at some point.
Are there any cities in particular that you guys find inspiring? Cities, spaces, worlds. I don't know. It's not worlds, since there's only.
That's an interesting. That's a hard one. That's a good.
You wanted a hard question. Yeah. Let's talk about what is the most inspiring.
You know what? Yes, cities. That's a great, because the way the light hits the city. Obviously we're all pretty well-traveled people. But the two places I'm most familiar with, where I've lived half my life in each, New York and Los Angeles, and they both have very distinct characters in terms of light, even on an overcast day. Yes, in terms of life memories and associative experiences that you've had based on the way light hits a city. For example, I always talk to friends and family about how in January, February, March in Los Angeles, on a crisp, sunny day, after a rainstorm, let's say, when it's really sharp and the air is clear, it feels to me the way the autumn used to feel in New York when I was a little kid, when I was a boy. And that is like, man, that hits a spot of inspiration that is very, very deep and very intimate.
I guess following up with that, I think it's really crucial if you're working on a project that's like based in Michigan or it's based in another city, kind of taking the time and actually understanding the lighting and the architecture in those cities, because they feel very different from Los Angeles, or they feel very different from New York. And I feel like that in itself is a character. So I think that's very crucial in your research process.
The first time I went to Iceland, it was January. So I think there was 5 hours of sunlight, and it was beautiful. I mean, I don't know, sunrise was like 11 a.m. and sunset was 3 p.m. It was insane. So it was just like, I saw sunrise and sunset just like consistently. And then there's so much, I guess like haze, you know, from just the geothermal energy there. And so everything was just like in this thick fog, and it was so stunning. Then I went back in July of 2021, and it was all sun all day, and sunset lasted for like 8 hours, and it was perfect. I didn't go to bed because I was like, oh my God, we got to drive around and take the best pictures right now. Magic hour was magic day, like for weeks. So I don't know. I was so inspired by that place. It was truly beautiful.
That's amazing. I'm going to add my own story to that, and that is not having been born in Los Angeles, there is a filter on Photoshop that's like a sunset gradient, and it has a lot of pinks and it has a lot of teals, and that didn't make sense to me coming from the Caribbean. And I'm like, this isn't sunset. And then I was driving down the 405 on Sunset, heading west in LA, and I'm like, this is where they got that gradient. This is sunset in Los Angeles. So that was my part of that story. But these are great answers. I think, you know, you have to find inspiration everywhere. You know, the next thing I wanted to talk about was the process of taking these written words and converting them into a visual medium. I wanted to ask each of you a little bit about how do you do that? What is your process when you first pick up the script for the very first time you're doing that cold read? What is going through your minds? Are you guys already picturing it in your minds? Is there like already a sequence that you build? And does that ever make it all the way to the final, you know, piece of the project or the final project? Or is this more like you're going to collaborate with the director? You try to keep an open mind. Like, I want to know what goes through your minds when you first read that script, and how does that evolve as you get involved in that project? And we'll start with Richard, since he likes taking the hard question.
Well, it's a complex process, but it's actually kind of simple. You read it and you filter it through your own sensibilities. I try not to impose anything too hard, too early. I want to hear what the director thinks, above all, what the director thinks. So many elements are in place already by the time we come on board. So you might be subject to other limitations in terms of locations, production design, sets that have been built. It's just a big stew. And it's the same process every time, but it's always different, is the best way I can put it. Like I say, I try not to impose an image, but as I read a script for the first time, I can't help but develop some imagery in my mind that might make it to the final product and might not. But it's just, I try to fight that, but it's impossible.
I mean, I would say for myself, I feel like the first time I'm reading the script, I'm more reading it as just an audience member, and do I like it, do I not like it? And then that second read, I'm more breaking down for characters. You know, what are we going through? What are we exploring? And that kind of decides the visuals, you know? And that starts to be my rubric of, what if we tried this? What if we tried that? And then implementing that with some of the director's visions and so forth. And it's an open conversation that by the end, I don't remember if it was my idea or their idea, which I think is really beautiful.
Yeah, I love what you guys are saying. I totally agree with everything. I mean, it's such a, you know, filmmaking and cinematography, it's such a collaborative process that every day, every conversation you have is informing more and more. And on the first read, it's so hard because, you're just trying to like understand the story, understand the themes. And then on the second, third read, and as you actually start having creative conversations with the director, maybe the writer, the production designer, the costume designer, you start finding out who the cast is. It all slowly builds together. But one thing I really focus on my reads is, whose perspective is this story being told? And what should the audience be feeling in this moment, in this scene? And then checking to make sure that I'm interpreting it correctly. And if the director agrees, and then how can you build that visually within the story?
Do you guys ever, and I'm seriously asking this question, do you ever get to read a script completely cold? Meaning you don't know anything about the genre, you don't know anything about the ideas. It's just a script that comes across your desk and you're just reading it completely cold? Or is it always informed in some way by the project or the pitch or something like that? Has that happened to you?
It's happened to me a couple of times when director friends would send something over that they might not yet be committed to, and they're looking for another opinion. They say, I'm not going to tell you anything, just shut up and read it and tell me what you think. And that happens occasionally, but never really before being signed on.
I mean, I think it's an interesting experience reading a script with no other knowledge, because a lot of times you go into an interview and you've looked at their lookbook or you kind of have a sense of their visual design, and to go in and know nothing, you kind of have this free reign to start over. And I feel like there's less room of kind of failing in a way,
Yeah, I guess there's like less pressure when you go in cold on a script, but I don't know. I feel like at this stage, I got a lot of cold scripts in the beginning, but at this stage, it's like everything comes with a little synopsis, a little brief, a little who's attached, and for me, a lot of those things really influence if I want to do the job, like who is directing, what is the kind of theme of this? Those things have really informed me at this stage of my life of like if I'm interested in the script or not. It's good and bad. Sometimes you're like, oh my God, there's 10 scripts in my inbox. And you're like, that's great. And then you're like, oh my God, I have 10 scripts in my inbox. You're like, I can't possibly give like real attention to everything. And so cold reads are fun, but it really depends on like where we're at in life,
Absolutely. And so how does that process usually work? And I know it's going to be different for every project, but how does that process work of building that visual world with the director? And with the other departments, right? Because, production designers are going to be involved, and costumes play a big role in this. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's explore that process.
No, you're starting now, yeah?
How does that come about? Again, I guess it's like a big pot of stew. Everyone has something to contribute, and it synthesizes in its way down your lane, and you find a way to address it or work with it or apply yourself. Bring something of yourself to it. It's a cliche, but it's true. It's a giant collaboration, and we all bang off each other, bounce around like molecules, and it astonishes me that anything sentient comes out of it at the end.
I would say clarity is key.
Yeah.
And as simple as that. And I think that translates to every department, going from you working with your team, working with the director, working with the production designer. I think if you have clarity on what you want to achieve, that translates to everything, and it makes the overall product a lot easier to make.
Yeah, I think intention, what is the intention of what we're creating? And I think like when I start talking to a production designer, they are just the best collaborators because they have so many ideas, and they are the ones who are really building the physical world for me. And a lot of times they'll be inspired by something historic they found that's based on a character, or like this character reminded them of this. And then it's like where you kind of have to find a starting point. And then from there you can build upon how do we make this our own? And with every conversation, it just gets clearer and clearer.
If I can just tag on, There has to be one vision, a leader. A director has to have the leading vision that keeps everyone on the same path. Because we've probably all been party to productions where that leadership might have been lacking on some level, and then every department is making their own movie, and that's never a good thing. So we take our lead from the director, and hopefully everyone can line up with that, and that helps to eliminate a lot of the variables that you might have in the ways you approach things.
Speaking of having a vision and a singular vision, I think one of the things that many young DPs struggle with, and I know I struggled with it too, was the idea of finding that balance between technical knowledge and artistic intent, right? And I think especially early in your careers, or at least many DPs that I know, you're so focused on the technical and the know-how that it's hard to really focus on the art. So I want to talk about you guys, how you've been able to find that balance within your careers and how you're able to maintain that focus so that you can bring that artistic piece in. Things are getting so complicated, right? You have virtual walls, you have cameras and technology and Steadicams and gyroscopes and LEDs and remote controls and all this stuff. So, how do you guys find that center to be able to be artistic within the chaos that is a set?
Well, you have to master the technology. It's a technical medium, no question about it. You have to have a death grip on the technology, every aspect of it, but only to the point where you're so good at it that you can forget it. Like a jazz musician, be a consummate keyboard artist such that you can improvise in the moment without thinking. And that, I think, is the best summation of it as far as I consider it. The technology should not be blocking the creativity. It should be enabling the creativity. So you can't just keep piling technology on top of technology for the sake of it. You've got to keep a clear mind and try to find the shortest distance between 2 points and then apply the right punishment to the crime, so to speak.
So, Richard, I'm going to put you on the spot here and see if I can get you to think of an instance when that happened to you. Was there a time in your career where you were in a situation where you were so obsessed with a technological move or something that for making a specific movement or shot or lighting situation that you just let it kind of get away from you as far as the art?
Yeah, I can't think of a specific. I know they've happened, but that has always been the byproduct of bad communication. Not being clear either on my end or the director's end or a mixture of both about what we're trying to do. If you can be really clear and explicit and specific, you will never have those problems. Sometimes my mantra is simple, just simple. The simplest mean reduce what we're trying to do to the simplest way to do it, which doesn't mean that sometimes you don't have to go to extreme or complex means to achieve that. Sometimes you need an 80-foot techno crane on top of this, some built over that. That might be the simplest way to do it. But there's always a more complex way, and it's easy to get lost in that thinking. And that's what I always try to avoid and advise people to avoid. And it all starts with the communication.
That's great. Do you guys have anything to add on this one?
I mean, I feel like you really hit it on the nose, to say the least. But I think
it was a great answer.
It was, but I mean, looking back at my own career, I spent a lot of time getting better at the technical, so I wouldn't have to think as much about the technical and really focus on the creative. Because a lot of times you're thrown into situations where you're only thinking creative, and when you get to the camera, you just got to be able to execute. So I think if you can spend the time really focusing on the craft, the creative just kind of flows through.
Yeah, I mean, tools are definitely here to support the vision, and they should really direct the vision or kind of like veer you off a different path. I mean, we're at a place here right now where we are bombarded with a bunch of new tools, which I have not taken all in. But, the other great thing is that you have technicians, right? And like for me, my gaffers, my key grips, my camera operators, my ACs, like literally everyone I work with also come to these shows, and they're also seeking out the new tools. And so for me in my process of prep, when I'm coming up with a new way of shooting something or trying to execute something very technically difficult that I've discussed with my director and we've kind of figured out what it is we're trying to achieve, I very quickly speak to the rest of my crew so that we can, as a team, build out how do we get this done in a technically proficient, technically not proficient, but efficient way, taking into account like resources and time and money.
Because there's always a budget. So to dig into this a little bit or sidestep into it a little bit, I think one of the things that a lot of people struggle with when they first begin their career is the shot that they have in their mind and translating that into the screen, right? And it never quite works. But I think it gets better the more you do it. But I wanted to discuss, like, how has that been, like, how have you guys experienced that? How have you gotten better at getting what is in your mind to translate into the screen? They're both looking at you, Richard.
I think, well, early in your career, it's always a battle to do that. You're imitating on a certain level. On another level, you're just finding your way. This is not something you can learn by being told or reading a book. You have to do it. And you have to make mistakes and your own mistakes. And that's the way to figure it out. It's a lot easier to do that today than it was in the film era. That's for certain. A lot more ways to learn and resources available and places to go that didn't really exist in the past. So that can maybe help shorten that, but it still comes down to an internal battle or an internal struggle until you actually figure it out. And that's just like water dripping on a rock. You know, it just takes time and effort and just doing it.
I mean, I think it's really important as you work on bigger and better projects to kind of follow through from what you did in prep, what you shot, and then what was in the edit, and then into color correction. And I think by kind of following through on a lot of my projects, I've been able to kind of see, okay, we kind of messed up here, or maybe we went down another alley, and just looking at old lookbooks and kind of seeing my own personal taste change, that's kind of created the evolution, which is really interesting because it wasn't influenced by someone else. It was influenced by myself.
So I'm just thinking of like, it's interesting because I guess your question was very specific about like when you're first starting out.
Not necessarily. I think it's about, tips to anyone who's out there is how do you learn
executively? Yeah.
to match what is on the screen.
I feel like sometimes when I'm struggling with like how I'm trying to see a scene, obviously there are location photos, you can start thinking about blocking. I really try to use stand-ins on a scout to like visualize it in a space. And then, I'm sure a lot of people know about the app Artemis where you can, choose your camera, choose your lenses, and you can even shoot video and kind of do a little rehearsal move. So those things are things that I've done to kind of just like really spend more time studying it in the real space with real people to see how it's actually moving. And there's just so many questions that are hard to answer, especially when you're trying to do a complex move that involves stunts. And then, now it's like, oh, there's a stunt coordinator. I can lean on them and talk to them a little bit about, is there the ability to do a previs with your doubles, and we can kind of see it all together and, fake this space and put some boxes up to measure out the space. So there's just a lot more like collaboration involved if you feel stuck. Like, I think the thing to focus on is like ask questions and don't be afraid to say you don't know and just like try something.
I mean, going off that, I would say testing.
Yeah.
Like the idea of if you don't know, test it. You don't have to test it on the shoot day. I feel like if you're testing it on the shoot day, you're probably messing up. And
then it's not a test. It's just
it's not a test. It's a take.
Yeah. I think that's something I learned, I think, like, through the years is just advocating for more prep time, for testing, for exploration, to, like, find our voice in this film. You don't do that overnight. You really need to, like, meditate on it and explore a little.
Similarly, Are you ever afraid of stagnating? Like, how do you maintain your growth as an artist? And are you ever afraid that you're using the same tools or going to the same tricks as you approach a new project compared to an old project?
Stagnate? Never. Every day is a new day. No, seriously, every day is a new page. And you can reinvent yourself. You can do anything you want. You've got a completely blank canvas. And you take that into the set with you. I do. And I'm always trying to do something different because I'm very aware of what I've done. And you get bored with it, and you want to be trying new things and new tools and new effects, new approaches. It's more of a psychological thing than a physical thing. The tools are all the tools. We all use the same lights and cameras and post-processes. But what makes it different and personalized is your own personal taste. And it's always a battle to improve that taste and refine it and grow it. So stagnate, no, never been an issue.
It's kind of funny because I feel like when I go into each project, it's the same routine. And to me, I really like routine in the sense of I'm able to really build my shot list very quickly. And I think it's more of that the project and the collaborator start to change my approach in a way. But I feel like organization is huge being a cinematographer. So it's like you, to a degree, you kind of need to keep that sense of uniformity, and then you kind of divert.
Yeah, I love prep. I love being organized. My whole brain is a spreadsheet. You know, it's the way I get through life. But in terms of being, feeling stagnant, I mean, I work across different genres, and I'll shoot poker face, and then we'll wrap it. Be like, great, I just want to do a documentary, just me with the camera, no crew. Let's keep it small. And then I'll do that. And I'm like, man, I'm so tired. I can't wait to have a crew again. I just like to keep it interesting. So I think it's important to kind of work across different genres to kind of stay sharp. Because, on the bigger stuff, I don't always hold the camera anymore, and I miss that. And so when I then do documentary, I'm like, okay, I got to hold this thing now.
No, that brings me to a really interesting question. And I think that there is when we talk about art or the art of cinematography, I think people think of serious big movies, right? Like a Lawrence of Arabia or a Road to Perdition or something like that. But is there room for this in any other genre? I mean, you guys have experience with all kinds of genres, documentaries, comedies, and things like that. Is there room for art in comedy? Or are you just a technician with that?
I don't know that any of it can be called art. Any motion pictures, honestly. It's a craft, certainly, and if there's art, it comes out of the craft, and it's not for us or me to judge anything I've done on that level. That's for certain. It's art is a tricky thing, and this is a completely commercial enterprise. What we do, if art comes out of the craft, once again, then that's great. But it's not something that I think you can consciously set out to commit to the sensor or celluloid and hope or expect to have any reasonable expectation is going to end up that way at the end of the process. It might. There's a possibility. But if a painter starts with a painting or a novelist starts to type, they have absolute control over all of it, every aspect of it. That's not the case with what we do, so it's a little diluted on some level or another.
You can use this as others. Yeah, like is cinematography
Is cinematography art? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny because it's such a subjective narrative. I think you go into a project or you're just watching movies and it feels very personal, and I think that kind of correlates to being art in a way. And it's funny, like I did a bigger comedy and we shot it the polar opposite, and I think that's the beauty of this industry is just because there's a norm set doesn't mean that's how you're going to make the movie. It's more of building a visual design that really fits the perspective you want to explore.
Yeah, I feel like when we think of art, we think of like a physical media or like a physical medium. And I feel like the art of cinematography is like the art of relationships. It's not just what's like the art of like lighting or the art of, it's all of it. It's like the art of like how you carry yourself every single day, and the art of like how do you make people to come together and make this thing that is it art? It's like, but the fact that we all came together, we all have our input in every single creative decision, I think makes it art. So.
Well, I think that's a really good answer. So I guess it's a no for Richard.
Well, your eyes opened wide when I said that. I didn't mean to offend you.
I loved it. I guess no. I loved it because I think there is a real question to be had, as you mentioned, that this is a commercial medium, and we are, we cinematographers are craftsmen, and they're hired hands at the end of the day. So, is there art in what they make?
Yeah, it can. Can art be created? Yes, no question. There are artful motion pictures, movies that I consider art. But in terms of your own work, I think it's a fool's task to think you're going to go out the door and today I'm going to go out and create art. It doesn't work like that. You might have some artful moments and the totality of it might turn out that way, but you can't legislate that. Not in the same way that you can in other forms of art.
I think that's an amazing answer.
This could be wrong. I may be entirely wrong, but that's how I feel right at this moment.
I think you're absolutely right. Honestly speaking, I think you're absolutely right, because the mark of a successful cinematographer in their career is not necessarily the artful expression of what they're doing, but are they bringing a project in on time? There's so many other things that mark the success, right?
And this is not a world of our making,
Our director's artists. Our director's artists.
Not in the same sense, no. At least as far as I'm concerned. Yes, and no. Again, there's context. In certain aspects, yes. In others, not so much.
Veronica, Christine?
I agree. I mean, I think it depends on the scope of what you're making and the interpretation of what art is, right? There is an art to doing something, but is it art? I don't know.
I mean, I think a bigger question is, would you watch a whole movie that was art in a way? I think it's more what we do is we kind of take you into a story, and it's more storytelling, if we're talking about narrative. So the idea of singularly like identifying one thing, I don't know.
No, and I think that's at the core of what I've been trying to get to at this panel, which is the idea that, you guys are creatives, right? This is a creative medium. It's not a rote medium. Yet within that creativeness, it is a commercialized system that you have to create. So can you be creative and create an artistic moment in a mayonnaise commercial, for example?
Of course, people do it all the time. I mean, absolutely, no question. But again, that's coming out of craft. And without you could have a great idea for a painting, let's say, but if you don't know how to paint, your idea is worthless. So everything that we do comes out of mastery of craft, and if it can be interpreted on some level as artful, then that's a magnificent byproduct of the craft.
I think this is a perfect place to end the panel. I think this is fantastic. We're gonna go ahead and open this up for questions. So if anyone have any questions, we'll go ahead and ask them here. And then if not, we'll wrap it up. So, but first, let's give it up to our panelists. So do we have any questions from the audience? Casey.
I said craft mayonnaise, that's why.
It's not my fault.
Sorry, I was making a joke, sorry.
Christine was cracking jokes.
There's so many different positions within a film, right? How did you choose to become a DP?
All right, so with so many positions in film, what is it that drew you to becoming a cinematographer? Is that the question? Okay, so we'll start with Christine.
I mean, for me, it's really the interpretation of helping a director visualize a story, you know, and it is being a leader on set. I think it's really important that for me on all the sets I was on where I wasn't the DP really set the tone of the vibe and the room. And, you know, I'm making jokes up here. That's important to me. You know, I want the room to be fun. I want it to be joyful. I want it to be a fun process. But in the end, I do want to make art.
So I would like to make art as well, based on this conversation. I would say for myself, I think I really enjoyed the technical side and then the creative side coming together. And I think it's just kind of with every project, it's very different. And I think when I look at a lot of my collaborators thinking about directors, they will work on 1-2 projects a year. And as a DP, I work on 10 to 20, you know, maybe more projects. So I get to work with a lot of different collaborators. And I think those experiences kind of change my way of storytelling. So I think it's kind of the special craft where you're able to kind of learn from other filmmakers and just really practice.
For me, it comes down to generally, specifically, one item. I get an enormous satisfaction out of recording or capturing a moment in time in order to be able to share it with other people. And that's what really appeals to me about the whole operation.
I think that distills filmmaking and theater and song and just sitting around the campfire and telling stories in one very eloquent sentence.
What are your determining factors in deciding to be the camera operator yourself or hire someone?
What are the determining factors whether you are going to hire a camera operator or you're going to operate the project yourself?
I've done plenty of operating over the years for myself and for other people. And it's a great job, and I enjoy it very much, and I enjoy composing and all of that. But as a DP, I very quickly got used to having an operator. I believe it's a full-time job, and the extra set of eyes and are very helpful, and they relieve me of a bunch of mundane responsibilities. Mundane but important responsibilities, so I can pay more attention and put more energy into other things that are actually more important than those important things.
I mean, I think it comes down to budget. I mean, definitely on my smaller projects, I'm operating, or even on bigger projects, if it's really intimate and it's just like the director and myself, I love operating, but there'll be times where we're doing bigger scenes. You know, we have multiple cameras, and I think it makes sense to have myself more at the monitor and kind of guiding the ship, you know, because it's really interesting when you bring an operator on, they bring a new voice, you know, because like you've seen it one way this entire time, and it's really nice to bring in an operator who can just think technically.
Yeah, I've operated a ton for other DPs. I love operating. Operating is so much fun. It's so rewarding. You know, my mom, I was trying to describe to my mom what I do. She doesn't even understand. But she finally came and visited me on set on a feature, and I had an operator. And she goes, "You don't even hold the camera?" And I go, "Whoa, Mom, like, I have a chair. Anyway, that's just a little anecdote. But operators are so important, and it does come down to budget a lot. But, you know, operators for me, and when I was an empowered operator, I felt like I was adding and I was supporting the DP in a way that the DP is having a million conversations all day, and the operator keeps things going on set. You know, it's like, we did the blocking, you know where the camera's set up, you can do second team, I have to work on this other thing, I'll come back and check on it, we'll make it better together, you know, and having that support of a camera operator is invaluable. And then there are times where I'm like, okay, so I'm hiring operators. I'm like, so there might be some times where I'm going to want to do the shot. Is that okay? You know, so it really, for me, sometimes I'm like, no, I really want to do this one. And it's just like, you know, it's fun, it's play. And, but the support of a cam op is huge. And so many times it is budget related.
Okay, so going back from like where you started now Could you just tell me, like, your golden rule for yourself personally as cinematographer, like, your golden rule? Like, what would that be?
I feel like I don't know to repeat that one. I feel like we picked it up pretty good. But she was asking, considering where you started and where you are now, what would you consider the one golden rule that you hold yourself to? What is the one, I think, constant, right? Maybe that has held true for you. Go ahead, Richard.
No, it's okay. You guys think, because
If you stop Richard for 1 minute, you get a free light.
it's, there's probably 30 golden rules. Yeah, and we could spend the rest of the day going over them. We'll always make sure you get paid. And don't work 16-hour days.
I would like to steal his golden rules. I mean, I think it's really important to say thank you and to look, into your coworkers' eyes and really get to know them. Because I think you never know who's going to be on your next set. And even here, just being at Cine Gear, a lot of these people, you're going to run into them again. And I think remembering names, remembering faces, and having open conversations with people, it goes a long way. And I think about, like, when I first started to now and just seeing so many familiar faces, it's so cool to see them on set in the position they wanted to be at years ago.
Veronica, did you steal that answer from me? No, that's so good. I totally agree. I mean, I think we're just, all these rules we've actually worked on this manifesto. You can buy it outside too. But no, respect goes a long way. I mean, for me, I can't speak for everyone, but I was a PA, everyone has been somewhere where that's their starting point. And if you respect everyone, people remember that. I mean, I really value just like connection, so that's really important to me, just to make sure that people feel respected, and that, when you have a space where you allow for ideas to flow, then you actually get a better result. I might have a shot in mind, but if my operator has a better idea, I'll be like, please tell me, or like the PA might say something like, wait, what'd you say? Wait, let's do this together. I think that really makes my day, it just makes my day much more fun.
That was pretty good. All right, anyone else? We have more time for more questions. If anyone wants to ask a question, don't be shy. If you stump Richard for a full minute, we'll give you a free light. Yeah. Wow. So make it a tough question. He wants tough questions. He wants the tough questions. Richard, Coke or Pepsi?
Bring it on.
Go ahead, Steve. Steven.
How do you guys maintain a healthy balance between a work and personal life?
He really went with a tough question. How do you find balance and maintain balance between your professional and your personal life?
You have to make the effort. It's not that hard, but you have to make the effort. Pay the price. Get up early. Go for a run. Work out. Do something. Eat well. Have a good diet. Stay away from the craft service table. Drink lots of fluids, a lot of water during the day on the set. But then enjoy your private life too. That's just, by this point, it's a pretty well-oiled machine for me. But you have to make the effort. That's really the bottom line.
All right, no late for Steven. Richard was
I'm going to go. So I think it's really important to live life. And I think I'm horrible at it. All I do is work, and then I don't work. And I think we're in the business of making stories, and no one wants to hear stories about movie making. So I think if you can kind of take the time and kind of reset, it's only going to make you a better filmmaker. And I think the time offset makes you miss it so much more.
Now, I think when you're starting off, you feel like you have to work all the time. And maybe you do, because you feel like you want to meet everyone, but then eventually you're like, oh, quality over quantity, You really need to choose the projects that matter to you. And that's the other thing is, the projects that speak to you, that matter to you, those are the things that are going to be enjoyable, and you're actually going to have a good time doing it. I also hire all my friends, so when I'm on set, it's like, yeah, we're getting paid to hang out. That's like my goal. I just want to hang out, make something fun. But then I'm consistently working on the life part. Life and work to me is kind of hand in hand in a way, but so much of my work involves the people in my life. And when I'm not working and no one's working, I'm like, oh, I should throw a party. Everyone's available. That's my life. You just have to keep remembering why you do it and who you do it with, and what are the good days? What does that look like? How can you recreate the good days?
Nice. I'm going to start following these things, this advice. I have terrible work-life balance. Any other questions? Anyone else? Oh, right here. Well, first of all, we were talking about that earlier. But second of all, no, I'm kidding. Sorry, I had to make it be. What do you do to replenish? How do you refresh your creative juices? And how do you find inspiration?
It's actually funny. I feel like I actually go from you. I go on a run. I have to not think about it, because a lot of times I'll be reading a script and I owe a lookbook and it's due in a few hours and I have no ideas. And I'm the worst. I'll just wait until I have 20 minutes and I'll make it happen. And it's funny in the fact of you kind of need your mind at the right mindset to find ideas, because they're there. It's not necessarily I need to go discover something. It's more kind of sitting with yourself and breaking it down of what are you trying to say as a storyteller. There's the house. Too brilliant. Oh.
Anyone else? All right, any other questions? It was a really good answer. So run a lot is the answer.
I've been doing freelance work with influencers and art, local artists. So I signed up to go to film school, right? Because I'm YouTube University graduate. So I'm going to take this time to just know that I'm going to do this shit like it all. Can you hear?
Hi, Dad. YouTube University.
Yeah, basically I graduated from YouTube University. I've been shooting show for
So the question is, we have a YouTube University graduate who's been working with influencers for about 10 years and just recently joined film school. What film school are you going to? LA Film School for cinematography. And he wants to know any advice you guys have for him as he's getting on set, to get on set more, and what he should be doing to get the most out of film school.
I mean, I think you're doing the right thing, because I feel like when I first started, the people I was on set with were the people I went to film school with. And they're in the crowd and they're staring at me right now. It's horrible. But that's your community that you grow with, And I think it's more about just getting on set. And it might not be the position you want to be, but just get on set, start making friends.
Yeah, when I went to film school too, and for me it was, I wanted to be a DP. I wasn't sure if I'd get there, and I was like, oh, I should just learn all aspects of it. I actually did sound a lot. I love being I love being a boom operator. There's something about that where you have to you're really observing the set, and you have to understand the flow of other departments, and learning how to light. Doing G&E. All those things are really important as tools to become a really good cinematographer.
Do you know why thunder always follows lightning? I think we're being taken over by the Matrix, or the robot overlords over here. Do you have a question for us? I think he just pointed out to me. Am I gonna die? It wasn't me. I wasn't there. It was someone else. It was a K9. Oh, whoa. Oh, look at that. He's stealing. We have a movie and a show. It was just dinner and a movie.
Am I the only one that gives the creeps?
I was super creeped out. Oh, God. What? Just a robot just out of nowhere.
So everyone forgot our answers, and they just saw this robot dog, and
I think, what were we talking about?
It was advice for how to work on set and become a better DP.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we did it.
Yeah, I think we did it. We did it.
We did it. We did.
Networks. Don't be afraid to network. What was the last movie that made you cry? Ted likes this question.
Just the other day, Saving Private Ryan.
have you ever seen Marley and Me? It's when the dog dies. Oh,
That's the worst.
I think every Pixar movie makes me cry, actually.
is it the leaving the toys, or is it you leaving your toys? What? Are you're saying like Pixar, like Toy Story? Oh,
Oh, well, I was thinking of like Up.
oh, more okay.
I mean, Wall-E. You know, they fall in love. Yeah, Toy Story is really sad too. The incinerator. That's scary. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack there. Yeah.
Up made me cry. I saw it with my mom. I'm from Venezuela.
Up.
They go to Venezuela. We've been to the Ollantaytambo there, and we went to see a theater. I didn't realize it was about that. And then Act 1, we're just
You know, the first 10 minutes, you're like, whoa.
master building.
Would you say that's art?
Huh?
Would you say that's art?
I would say that is craft. But I say you can't spell craft without art. All right, any questions?
This is the most informative panel ever.
Just dad jokes over here. No more questions. Last minute, last chance. If you stop Richard Crudo, you get a free light. So, we have one more question over here.
So you can get a self.
Difficult people on set, whether it be above, below the line, in general.
How do you deal with difficult people on set, whether they're above you or below you, in general?
Rear naked choke.
What?
Rear naked choke.
It's like any other situation. You find a way to deal with people. If they're really unreasonable, then you've got a problem. You have to take it to another level. But generally, how do you deal with people? You try to be decent and find a way to smooth it out. There's no one-size-fits-all answer to any of these questions, really. Yeah. It's context. Without a specific example to refer to, I really couldn't say. You know, some people need a light touch, others need a punch in the throat. I don't know.
I mean, I find if you can stay calm and kind of let them speak, they'll eventually kind of calm down. And I think your temperament, especially as a leader, kind of will display across everyone. And it's in some form of communication and trying to show a sense of clarity. And I just let them have their rant. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. When I come back, we'll deal with that.
Yeah, I try to find common ground with someone if, there's, it's such a, it's like all situational and there must have been just a misunderstanding and I try to figure out what happened, and then I even try to be blunt and say, hey, is everything okay? Should we take a few minutes and just talk about it? But actually address it. Because I think these things get worse as tension builds and passive aggressiveness just gets worse and worse. And if I sense a little bit of negativity, I'm like, hey, are we good? What's going on? Let's talk about it. I can sense something's not feeling good with you. I want to make sure you feel good here. So let's just be open and honest.
I'd like to add that a lot of times what happens is people's emotions get away from them. And so it's good to bring them back into realizing that there's an objective that you're trying to reach and that this emotional response that they're having is not tied to this objective. And how did you get there? Because once you start matching the emotion that you're getting from them back at them, now you're arguing about this and you're not dealing with this right here. And there's a great TikTok that is a bartender using kindergarten teacher techniques to talk to their bar, to the people that are at the bar, and it's amazing, and I highly recommend it. But it's literally like eyes on me, 1, 2, 3. Let's calm. Use your words. It's honestly, it's exactly the same techniques. You just have to like bring up a little bit for the adults, but it's all about emotions and dealing and getting them outside of that emotional response. No, that was not a question. That was just pointing up at the 20 by 20. That's right there. Okay. We're going to do 2 more questions, I think, and then we'll wrap it up.
So for me, I have a level of like, when I know I made it, like when I shoot car crash, an explosion, a huge dance scene, and like a race scene. So like for you guys, like what if you've done it already, what was your dream shot, or was there a shot, like a scene or a shot that you really want to accomplish?
So his question is, one of the ways that he has measured his own success is by having a bucket list of items that he's done. A car crash, a big stunt, a explosion, rain, night rain exterior, that kind of thing. Have you guys, in your careers, do you guys have that kind of bucket list? Is there a bucket shot list? Is there a crazy movie? Did you want to have a car shot into the atmosphere from space, or do a stunt from, one building to another that you guys, have still that you haven't achieved? Is there any bucket list items? Richard, do you want to film in the space station?
Shoot a Western. A feature film. Feature Western.
I like it.
Anamorphic.
I just like that answer. I would love to shoot like a big budget space movie, and I've shot a few space movies now in more of the low budget space, but I think it's got to make sense for the story. Like, it's hard for me to just pick, oh, I just want an explosion, or like, I just want rain falling. I think I got to read a story, and then that is like, ooh, let's try something new there. But it's hard to just pick a single item out of a whole movie.
That's a hard question. What happens if they stump me? Do they get a light?
No, only Richard.
Yeah, I mean, I
He's
don't know.
unshakable.
Yeah, no, really. Should I also say Western?
We're all doing a Western.
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, that's such a good question. I don't really know how I don't really measure success that way, I guess. And so like everyone's like, you've done this, you've done that. What do you want to do next? And I was like, I don't know. I would just love to shoot Z-Way again. So if you guys want to get Z-Way a season 3, let's try and campaign for that, because that's the thing I just want to like get back to and shoot more of. But I don't know. I don't really have like a bucket list thing. I mean, I just want to keep telling engaging stories about people I care about and perspectives that matter. So.
Is there a bucket list director? Or actor?
There's a whole long list, but I wouldn't want to name it because they'll all be jealous of each other.
I like that answer.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I think it's really hard because I think my favorite collaborations have been with people I've done so many movies with, and it's like I'm joining their story so late in the game. Like maybe I want to be with Barry Jenkins, but it's not the same because I wasn't with him for all these other movies. So I want to create my own story and not join on someone else's story.
I'm sorry, the correct answer is Bill Murray. Bill Murray was the answer we were looking for.
I mean, I always love the worlds that Michel Gondry create. So it would be really cool to create a world with Gondry.
That would be awesome. All right, guys, I think we're going to... Oh, we have one more from our sound boom operator. And now I can tell my joke again. And
I don't actually know any sound things.
Do you know why thunder always follows lightning? Because even God has to wait for sound.
Bird.
It's on it.
How many lights does it take for a DP? How many DPs does it take to put up a light? I don't know. They're still talking about it. That's pretty good. That's the closest. What's the difference between God and a DP? God doesn't think he's a DP. All right, go ahead. Ask your question. Sorry. What got you guys to start shooting? And this will be the last question, but it's a good one. What is it that got you to start shooting? What was the moment, the singular memory in your life, the event? You go left,
I stumbled into it. Literally, I stumbled into it and found that I liked it, fortunately.
Was there like a magazine, like a film mag that you tripped over and then you met that is...
I tripped over a sandbag. No, I actually stumbled into the work. It was a confluence of events that presented it to me at a time when I was thankfully receptive to it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have a very similar response. I think it's the more I learned about the industry and the more I worked, the more I kind of fell in love with it. And I don't think it was ever like a specific moment. Like when you read those stories, when I was 5 years old, I like saw this movie. You know, it's always been because I work with my friends and I'm creating stories. That's why I love it. But it's been decades of that.
Yeah. So I'm from Hong Kong, and when I was 9, I went back to Hong Kong, and I have an older sister. This is a very long answer, actually, but I have an older sister anyway. I was there as a single child, and I walked outside, and there was a movie set, and my parents were like, you can stay up till whatever you want. And I was like, I want to work in movies. I could just stay up all night and hang out. And I also grew up watching Wong Kar-wai films, which are obviously stunning. So those things definitely influenced me into choosing this profession.
It was Breaking 2, Electric Boogaloo. No, okay. All right, guys, thank you so much for the panel. Let's give it up for our panelists. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank